sport at the highest level is 99% mental and 1% physical. This type of a personality is very, very selfish. When the pressure increases, then more often than not, the subconscious personality starts to drive that performance. They know what they want, they just don't know what they're ready to let go of. And that's the biggest problem.
My next guest on today's podcast is Shayamal Vallabhjee. Shayamal is a performance coach to athletes and executives in corporate setup, a psychologist, an author, and more importantly, an individual who runs a holistic and a well-rounded performance enablement for many individuals across different fields. And Shayamal has a very interesting perspective to really peak your performance, whether it is sports or it is a corporate career. So without much further ado, and I would recommend highly you not to miss this show. So here you go.
Hi Shayamal, welcome to Masters Decoded podcast series. I'm really glad to have you on the show today.
Thank you so much, Anisa. I'm very, very excited to be here today and looking forward to deep diving into this chat.
Now, first of all, congratulations to you and to the entire India team, where you'll have been achieving some amazing feat in the world of football. So you want to talk a little bit about how that journey has come about? I know you've recently been onboarded as part of the team, and would love to hear your role and how are you creating that impact. So let's start from there.
Yes, thank you very much. I've been with the Indian team for just over 6 months now, and I joined the head coach Igor Stimic is a good friend of mine, and we got chatting. And a large part of my work in performance psychology has to do with personality markers. So I track the impact of personality markers and its relationship to stress. So my entire research around for psychology is around personality. And in the world of sport, you hear a lot of people say that sport at the highest level is 99% mental and 1% physical. Now that 1% physical is non-negotiable, which means you have to be really, really at the supreme level of your peak performance. That's that 1%. But that 99% of mental is where there's a large degree of variety that sort of comes in. And cognition is a person's ability to cope with stress that is purely perceptional. Now, the reason why I say purely perceptional is that in the exact same situation, if you have 11 people on the football team or 11 on a cricket team, all of them in a particular situation are not experiencing the same amount of stress, even though the situation is exactly the same. So that gives us an indication that stress is perceptional based on a lot of things, which you've dealt with, your experience, your technique, all of those things. Now, if something is perceptional, the capacity to deal with that is cognition, is mental. So the only way for us to really and truly quantify what a person's cognitive capabilities are and their mental capacity is through personality markers, how they mature, how we train them, and what their relationship to stress is. So I've been doing research for about, I'd say the last four and a half years right now, where I've been testing and tracking personality markers in high achievers across all sports, then running a parallel sample group of kids between the age of 10 and 12 in that exact same sport. And I'm trying to track how many of those markers are similar and what is the maturity curve of those, and can we expedite the maturity curve of personality markers that we flagged in high achievers, people who perform really, really well in that particular sport at the highest level. So that's the research I brought into the football team. And, I've been tracking, I've now tested more than 60 people. Wow. Okay, footballers. I've got data on 60 elite Indian footballers. I have data on about maybe 250 professional footballers around the world. And I'm just sort of tracking and mapping that. And what's interesting with my work is that I'm able to understand on the basis of personality which personality markers predispose a person to success in a particular position in a sports team or in a team-based dynamics, and how do we get those people to work together. So that's been predominantly my work for the last 6 months with the Indian football team and the last 4 years in terms of research, and it's been fascinating.
Now, this is amazing there, and there are a few things which I want to double click on, which you just said. So first is personality markers, right? Can you give examples of what these personality markers are and what your findings are? Which ones are like the top ones and which ones prohibit somebody to be not really giving their best, even their fitness levels are the best?
Yeah, so there's a few things, I run a whole battery of tests. And when I look at a personality, first I look at a macro personality. So is a person a creative, free thinking personality, which means that if they're creative and free thinking, that means they are very attached to the ideation process, and they're not very particularly interested in the execution of that. So they like to take ownership of an idea, but are not so interested with the execution, much like many artists are in some shape and form. So you got a macro level artistic personality. Then you get a macro level logistic rational personality, which means that everything's very, very methodical to them. So it has to make sense, and they have a framework, a structure, or a tick box, and they execute in accordance with that. So even if something steps out of that, they have no way of course correcting unless their framework has accommodated for that. But if the framework hasn't accommodated for that, they're completely stuck. So that's a very rational, that's a very methodical person. Then you get a natural leadership type of personality, someone who has great conviction in their ideas, someone who has the ability to lead, pull people together. This type of a personality is very, very selfish, but they're also very genius in the sense that they're able to connect random dots together. So when you're working with a personality like this, they could rub a lot of people in the wrong way, but you also got to be very sensitive with how you speak to them, because they're very attached to their personality, which means that they don't like to fail publicly. So if you question them or you put them in a situation where they don't have the answers to give you and could bring their reputation or credibility into question, you've literally put them on a sliding scale of completely deteriorating from that point onwards. Why? Because you've sown the seed of doubt in their mind, and that's just going to amplify day by day. So that's a sort of leadership personality. We also find we've been able to identify certain personality markers that are completely suppressed, which means that the person has a phenomenal amount of doubt and insecurity, a lot of fear present in their mind. They have a lot of questions around maybe their career, around their position. The conflict could not necessarily be in sport, could even be outside of their sport, in their personal life. But as a result, that insecurity and doubt has completely suppressed their personality. So someone along these lines, you can pretty much rest assured they're operating at about 20 to 30% of their potential. And the reason they're doing that is because they don't understand their full personality, so they don't even know how to align that core being with what they're doing on a day-to-day basis. And then, you get another macro personality, which is very emotional. So the person is highly, highly emotional, highly invested in creating a harmonious environment, completely conflict avoidant. What we see very interestingly is across many sports, these types of personalities become natural captains, but they don't become natural captains because they're the best person for the job. They become natural captains because they're the most liked people. So everyone votes for them. And the reason they're the most liked is because they're conflict avoidant, they're always happy, they're always jovial, they're always keeping a harmonious environment. But because they're conflict avoidant, they can't land a very, very difficult message in a team meeting or with a person, which means that under the leadership of this type of person, the team is literally operating subpar. They could raise the bar a good 20% under them. So these are sort of macro markers. And then I go into sort of micro markers where I'm looking at communication skills, introversion versus extroversion. I'm looking at willingness to communicate. There's a marker we track called neuroticism, which is one's ability to go into anxiety, depression, or have a negative incident impact them negatively over a period of time, and how do you coach them? So these are a whole bunch of things that we sort of look at, and that's what we're doing. We're double clicking on each one of these, and the implication of these data points is completely different for each person. And I think a lot of the tests we use are very, very scientifically validated. They've been used right across the board. And what I've come to understand in the last 4 years of working with personality markers is that it's probably one of the most validated sciences, but one of the most misunderstood sciences.
Yeah.
And the reason I say this is because every single one of us has two types of personalities. We have a conscious personality and we have a subconscious personality. So the conscious personality is made up of learned skills. Like, for example, you are a podcast host. To be a podcast host, if you ask someone what will be the persona and profile of that person, you say, hey, they need to be very outgoing, they need to be extroverted, they need to be great with communication. The truth is that you could be completely opposite to that. You could be an absolute introvert, but you've learned an extroverted skill to be successful at this job. So people do a personality test and they superimpose all of the data upon their conscious personality. And the conscious personality only thrives when motivation is present. You remove motivation from there, the subconscious driver kicks in, and those personality markers are not relevant anymore. So what really needs to go in as a performance psychologist is understanding, what is the dichotomy between how they're consciously showing up and what the subconscious driver is, the relationship between these markers and how to weave them together. And that's pretty much what I'm tussling with every single day.
No, it's fascinating. I often tell people, because I work in a corporate environment, that we all wear masks, and when those masks come out, our true selves come out. And you're bang on what you just said. Somebody looking at me doing this podcast will be, oh, he's an extrovert, he likes to talk to people. But candidly, I'm the biggest introvert. Like, if you leave me alone, I'll be sitting in my room reading a book or doing something, but I'm a complete introvert at heart. So that's my the other side, which people don't think, or I may be, but I am actually, right? And I'm doing this to get out there and to be comfortable in an uncomfortable situation. So I just wanted to ask you that from a macro perspective, and this is a very near and dear topic, do people have multiple personalities, or is it just like they're bucketed into one?
I mean, we have certain psychological diagnoses that speak of multiple personalities and schizophrenics, where you have a split personality and stuff like that. But by and large, people have multiple learned personalities. I'm talking about a conscious, healthy mind, right? Someone that's not impacted by any disease or not under the influence of any psychedelic or any medication as such. They would have multiple learned personalities, which means that, hey, they know that if you put them in this environment, I've got to behave like this. I put them in this environment, I've got to behave like this. And when you remove all motivation and all environments, then they have a different personality. This is natural. This is very, very normal. And the thing that has created this is the guardrails around each of the identities that you need to play. So, for example, you could take a typical human being who's very, very flirtatious, for example, may not mean harm, but by naturally is a very, very flirtatious person. You put him in a corporate environment and all of a sudden he may just pull in an introvert and his entire language will change. Why? Because the guardrails around how one behaves in a corporate world, predispose someone to getting into a lot of trouble with that sort of behavior. So there's a completely different learned skills in there. So the analysis and interpretation of personality in different roles is very, very subjective to each person, subjective to the roles, how they are. And for me, the main thing that I'm trying to ascertain is what is innate subconscious. That's the driver. Because the reason why innate subconscious is the main thing for me is because, you get to work and you get to work at 8 o'clock and you're there till 5, 6 o'clock. Okay. It's such a prolonged period of time that you are not operating at peak performance. And because of the duration of time, your peak levels rise and fall. So you got a lot of time to think and navigate your situation and take a step back. When you look at a professional football game, for example, that's 90 minutes, the intensity is high. You're at a peak level for 90 minutes. Okay. When the pressure increases, then more often than not, the subconscious personality starts to drive that performance and not the conscious personality. So I'm more interested in what would be the marker that would thrive in a situation where the pressure is at the most, because that's the world that I work in. I work in a high performance world. So I'm trying to say, hey, okay, this is it. And I see this very often. Like, I have one footballer. If you look at him, he would be the most timid person under the sun. And I've seen now over the course of 5 or 6 months, there've been about 2 or 3 occasions where the game is really, really at its peak.
Yeah.
We probably, he's come in with 5 minutes to go, and there's a lot of intensity. The game's very physical. Once he's got a red card, once he almost punched someone in the face, and at that moment there, the environment is not reminding him to be timid. So there's a subconscious personality marker that's been triggered. So there's a lion that's in there that's just waiting to come out, that's waiting to emote, that's waiting to take over that situation. And the reason why he's not like that all the time is because he's young. He's 22, 23 years old. And he's aware of the fact that, hey, listen, I'm playing in a national team and I'm not the senior player and I'm not even the first choice in that particular position. I'm good enough to be in a squad at 23, but not there. So, he's got guardrails in place that keep him timid, that keep him introverted, that keep him quiet, all of that. But when pressure increases and the guardrails fall off, we see a completely different personality that comes to the forefront. My job and my interest is how do I get him to tame that and get that personality under control all the time, as opposed to packing it away and not having control of when it sort of comes out.
It's and I can relate it to the corporate world. You said that you're doing 9 to 5. You have different peaks and troughs which happen, and unfortunately, many companies, people don't even look at it, right, as a function, and it is so apparent, like what you've just said. And talking about the same analogy, I remember Javagal Srinath, one of the famous bowlers, right? And he had his peak when he retired, before he retired, right, from the game of cricket. But if you, meaning, I still remember it very distinctly because that was one of the most spoken topic, like what kind of got him to his performances. To your point, he was spoken to by his coach, and one thing he found out that he was never expressive about his thoughts and his ideas. And during that coaching, he was able to kind of do that, and he was able to express his frustration, his ideas, and his thoughts, which made him a better player and kind of pivoted him to a different level of outcome. I've heard these stories. I've had an opportunity to hear him also, and that's what he revealed. That's what kind of made a big difference. This is very interesting. But when you draw parallels to corporates, right? Like you said, I'm working in a corporate. Okay, there will be 1 hour when it will be a tense moment, but then things die off. But that 90 minutes of a game can really break you down or make you. But how's your exercise? Okay, once you've analyzed people, you've seen that, okay, this is what is there, right? The subconscious traits. How do you now start working with somebody and start getting to a level which can work? Is it really possible to not have those subconscious or get them out completely from a person's mind?
It's 100% possible to coach someone in any particular situation, but the few prerequisites are: A is the willingness to do the work. B is the willingness to be honest and vulnerable. And the third one is the courage to try something different. If these variables are not there, it's very difficult to move someone from any situation, which means if the person is not even going to be open and honest about what they're lying about or what they're not allowing to come to the front, you can't coach that because they're in denial in the first place, or they're ashamed of it and hiding it away. So you can't coach someone to heal something they're ashamed of. You can't coach someone to get to a different place if they're not willing to try something else. So in the world of sport, we always say, actually most people know they know what they want. They just don't know what they're ready to let go of. And that's the biggest problem. But you have to let go of something for something else to come in.
Yep.
And most people just don't know that. They don't know, or they don't trust that letting go of this is going to create enough space for something else to come in. One of my professors at Stanford that I work in, I lecture on. I'm on his teaching team. His name is Professor Baba Shiv, and we run a course together called the Neuroscience of Leadership. And in that course, he talks of a beautiful saying. It's called subtract before you add, and that's really his mantra and his philosophy for life, which I talk about so much. And I tell people that most people, in getting to where they want to, they seem to think we need to add. And that's the beautiful thing about the world of sport, is that professional athletes are always subtracting. We're always trying to do less. Yes, there is a stage when we're trying to do more reps to condition the mind and condition the body. But as we're getting closer to competition, it's not about doing more, it's about doing less. And it's about trusting that what you need to learn is already ingrained in you and giving it the chance to sort of come to the forefront, and I think that's the biggest problem in the corporate world. The other thing, you asked a really interesting question. Can you coach a person? You can coach anyone. I say this as a massive, massive generalization.
Yeah.
I coach numerous unicorn founders, CEOs, C-suite people, and I talk to tons of people. Every single one of person I talk to has a desire and has a dream.
Yeah.
Okay. And when you ask them to break that dream down, like for example, you say, "Hey, listen, if you just take a random example of yourself being a podcast host, and you said, 'Hey, I'm doing this for 3 years. Who is the gold standard?' Maybe you tell me Joe Rogan's the gold standard. I'd like to get there. Joe Rogan records three-hour podcasts a week. He does phenomenal amounts of research around that. Now, to just record a 3-hour podcast means you need to be mentally alert and in that conversation for that duration of the time, because it's a single recording, that's going on. Then you need to have the mental bandwidth to do so many hours of research. Okay.
Yeah.
Most people know what they want, but they don't have the body to do the work to get it. That's what it comes down to. The body is not strong enough, not fit enough. The mind is not healthy enough. There's too many bad lifestyle habits. And as a result, their lifestyle and their lack of attention around their health is the biggest sabotaging block to their dreams coming true. It's not a willingness. The willingness is there. The desire is there. It's just they don't get the body in a stage that's strong enough. And that's the biggest differentiator with an athlete. An athlete is, anything you ask him to do, the first tick box is, do I have the body to be able to do that? And that's the first thing he ticks. Every other thing falls in place from there. We can sort out everything else. You can't sort out everything if the body is not strong enough.
And when you talk about body, is it mind or is it like physicality of the body?
Both. You can't, if the physical body is weak, which means if you're in pain, if you have chronic disease, it's impossible for you to have a healthy mind. Impossible. Your pain will be your biggest distractor. If you have a chronic disease, if you have sleep apnea and you're struggling to sleep at night, how can you stay focused for 8 hours in the middle of the day? So yes, it is. A healthy body is the vehicle for a healthy mind. And yes, you may get people, and I'm always given case examples of a person who is saying, hey, he's successful and look at this lifestyle. He smokes a packet a day. He sleeps for 4 hours. He does that. Yes, I said, but the thing is that you're looking at his success based on your ability to get there. I can tell you that he's underachieving by 25%. He can do way more. He can get way more, right? It seems like he's overperforming because you're taking his success and you're blueprinting it or superimposing it on your life. That's why it looks amazing. But if you look at it in his own life, he's underperforming by 25%.
And this is where it becomes very interesting. And I have seen it, right? If I'm not, meaning I'm still obese from a standard of that, but I'm on a journey, a common friend who's helping me, when I say common, to drive that physicality aspect. And I've realized that I was at one situation where I almost lost 100 pounds. I've gained few more, and I'm trying to get it back down to where I want to be.
Mm. Mm.
The body and the mind is a very interesting aspect. But you also spoke about one thing, which is stress, uh, Shamal, and that's, I've been doing a lot of focus work around stress, right? And there is good stress and there is bad stress. And in a game, how do you balance both? Because stress is stress, right, at the end of the day. And in that 90-minute, you can't really, your mind cannot dabble what is good and bad. But how do you coach people to manage that and have that equilibrium and let stress come in, but let it be in a good way rather than a bad way?
So the ability, use stress is the positive stress, and stress is obviously the negative impact of it on the brain. So what is good and what is bad?
Yeah.
Right. The situation is the same. The
Yeah.
thing that makes it good is when it's able to raise your performance, and the
Yeah.
thing that makes it bad is when your performance sort of drops, even though the situation could be exactly the same. Now,
Yeah.
in my experience, what I found uh, can take a normal situation that is stressful and turn it into a eustress where it becomes a motivator and positive is fundamentally comes down to the amount of work and the amount of practice you've done in there. And in sport, we have a word, it's called transferability, which means that, for you to take a skill from practice into competition, right? The situation in which you practice it has to be as close to mimicking reality as possible. Then you
Right.
get what's called skill transferability. So for most people who are trying to manage stress in their life, I ask a corporate person, what stresses you?
Yeah.
And they're saying conversations with my boss. Great. At least we've been able to put a pin in the ground. Most
Yeah.
people don't even know what stresses them out. That's the
Yeah.
biggest problem. If you don't know what's knocking you off center, you got no way of course correcting it. So what's happening is they've been suggested to do 5 minutes of meditation or breath work, which is great and it calms the nervous system. But if you don't know what's stressing you out and you're doing a practice, there's no way of bridging that transferability link that's critical to psychology. Okay. Now, let's assume you know what it is, and it is conversations with my boss. Now,
Yeah.
the question comes in is, how do I mimic that situation often enough? The Stoics call it, it's called Stoicism.
Yeah.
Ryan Holiday writes a lot about
Yeah.
it. A lot of people speak about it. Okay, Stoicism is living your fear, living that situation. Now, how can you mimic conversations with your boss so that you can mimic that stress level to understand how your body responds to that in some
Yeah.
shape and form? Now, one is mimicking that. The second thing is also practicing it, standing in front of a mirror and having that conversation, visualizing those conversations, and becoming familiar with those words that you'd like to use. All of that there would take a stressful situation into a eustress situation where it becomes a motivator and you raise your game. This
Yeah.
is what artists do. This is what actors do on stage. This is what athletes do. Is that we play out an entire situation in our mind, understanding all of the variables, understanding how it's going to play, visualizing the crowd, doing all of those things. My Indian football team, for example, every single day we start our day with 45 minutes of meditation and visualization. Every single day
Nice.
as a team, right? And we visualize not just positive aspects, but a lot of negative aspects. We visualize every single thing. When the team is down, how are we going to come back? How are we going to talk to people? How are we going to support them? We do a lot of power poses. So this is the problem between positive stress and negative stress. It's the work that has to be in between that links one to another or converts one from another that people don't often do.
Very, very interesting. But today meditation, breath work is an amazing tool, right? And I've been introduced to it about last year, and I've been fascinated with the world of it and really practice it. And I've seen a lot of transformation and changes in myself. But a lot of people don't even believe in it, right? And specifically when you look at variety of people you'll be coming across, how do you, and you spoke about transferability also, which I want to double click on, but transferability when it comes to believing in what works, do you see that as a challenge in that believability aspect of these tools, which are, you can't touch and feel but you need to experience them?
Yeah. So the first question you said is, like whether you believe in something or not, it exists.
Yeah.
So transferability is a skill. If I
Yeah.
put you in the same situation over and over, you will adapt to that.
Yeah.
Gravity is the best example. You don't have to believe it, but if I jump off a building, you will hit the ground. Whether you believe in it or not, it will happen. There's
Yeah.
certain laws that govern certain things, and there's a law that also will define it, but you have to understand it first.
Yeah.
Like a spaceship landing on moon is defining the law of gravity, but only when you understand the law of gravity can you understand what's required to define it. This is what sport is, and this is what sport science is about working through the process of understanding the rule well enough to understand what it governs and how to break it as such. So yes, belief is a very, very core aspect of being able to push past or shatter the glass ceiling. But more important than self-belief is actually the ecosystem around you. Why?
Yeah.
Because the ecosystem around you has to reverb that positivity and that belief consistently, because you cannot do it alone. It's impossible.
Yeah.
I'm running a 30-day mental toughness challenge with a small tribe that I have. And I started them off with a launch call on day one. Everyone was super motivated. Every single person woke up first day highly, highly motivated. 66 people started. Literally by day two, we'd lost 10 people. And absolutely nothing had happened. No one said anything. Why? It's because the mind will just constantly play tricks with you. I tell them, you can be in the room with the greatest motivators on the planet. The loudest voice in that room would still be your own voice, the voice between your ears, irrespective of what others are saying. And the only way to silence your own voice is through the conviction of work that you put in. So similarly, if you want to truly strengthen the belief in yourself and where you're going into it, it has to be backed up by work. I do understand the power of manifestation. I do understand that.
Yeah.
I do understand quantum physics and quantum engineering, and I fundamentally believe in that. But you need to have a mind so supremely strong, and that will only be built through showing up every single day. Every single day. I am yet to see a person come from a completely impoverished background who fundamentally believed I'm going to be a millionaire and didn't wake up every single day and do anything and become a millionaire. I'm yet to see that. So even the power of manifestation needs to be backed up with work. But what is that work doing? That work is building the muscle of conviction, and that conviction is reaffirming that belief because of the positive signals that you are recognizing from showing up every day. That is what it's important.
How can somebody be part of the tribe? Like, I'm sure people would want to know, how can they be part of the tribe?
Yeah, that'll be great. On my Instagram, it's called Inside the Locker Room, because all of the learnings come from literally inside the locker room.
Yes.
The tribe is governed by the rules of a locker room. So what happens in there stays in there. It's completely positive. We support, we push each other. I do Zoom coaching calls with them twice a month. I run challenges, different challenges all the time for them. And if you go onto my Instagram, you'll find the link there, the subscriber link to Inside the Locker Room as a tribe. And I'll share the link with you as well. You can post it in your show notes.
Definitely.
And I welcome everyone to come. We've got a beautiful tribe of people that really push past. And today, incidentally, is day 16 of our mental toughness challenge. The mental toughness challenge for us is broken up into 3 components. So there's a physical component of 100 reps, very simple exercises, but 100 reps every day. There is a journaling component, which is a reflection component. And that reflection component is designed to bring clarity. The psychologist Alfred Adler beautifully said, when the mind has clarity, it will align all other faculties to get you there. So what we're trying to do is give people clarity about what they want, number one. The second thing is, why do you want it? Do you want it because it's important to you, or do you want it because your neighbor has it and you think that it'll make you happy? Then we find clarity around what are we prepared to let go to allow that to come in. And then we find clarity around what's the ecosystem like that's going to support us to get to where we want to. That's the reflection component. And the third component of our beautiful challenge is really pushing past the fear. So I encourage people to share something on a social media platform every single day. It could be a photograph, it could be an image, it could be whatever it is. Some people have never done it, and pushing them, they've done it every day for 15 days. Some people share random things. Now we've got to a stage where they're sharing their own thoughts out there. Because I fundamentally believe every single one of us has an artist in us. And an artist has thoughts and has ideas and has beliefs. And you have a responsibility to give that life. And when you give that life, this new beautiful personality is going to emerge from that conviction that you get. So we support each other. We got 66 people, they share it. So at least the one thing we know is that, you may be fearful of sharing it, but you got 20 out of 60 people who go and comment it and like it, which you would have never had before. You're going to get 100 people liking it and forwarding it. So, as a community and a tribe, we help people get that momentum from 0 to 1, which is a beautiful, and it's a safe space.
Oh, it's interesting. I know somebody, now I know why that person has been tagging you in every post, so now I know why. So no, great. I'll definitely put that link in. Just switching gears, Shayamal, you've been across variety of sports. So you've not just done soccer, right? You've done many sports, right? You've been also part of Kings 11 Punjab IPL team as well, right? You spoke about 90 minutes, but when you look at the world of cricket, it's 4 hours, or it can be a day, it can be 5 days, right? What's the similarity, dissimilarity when you touch different athletes? That's what I'm trying to get at. Like, if you think about Usain Bolt, who's just running microseconds or seconds race, right? That stress is so far. And you had an article which kind of compared Usain Bolt and Virat Kohli in terms of the fitness levels. Where do you see that parallels, right? And there's so much which we as corporate can learn as well, right? There's those seconds, then there's hours, then there is days, right? Or it can give multiple days. That's what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah, it's very interesting. The first thing is that what's important to understand, that the biggest differentiator between sport is that sport is it's a limited rule, finite game that we play. So Hussein knows that at my start line, the finish line is at 100 meters, and it's not going to be at 101. We know that the test match is going to end at 5 days. Play will start at 10 a.m. and it'll end at 6 a.m. We know the football match can only, maximum it can go is to 90, plus another 15, plus another 15, but eventually it'll end in even penalties. So there's finite rules that govern it. The problem is in business, it's an infinite rule game. So the goalposts are constantly changing, the rules are constantly changing, and the people you're competing with are playing by a different set of rules. This is why the stress is so much greater in business than it is in sport, because the transferability quotient is far higher in sport than it is in business. Having said that, there's a lot that you can learn from sport and bring into business as such, in terms of how to condition, how to transfer yourself, how to do that. The thing that I also find that's fundamentally interesting in sport, irrespective of what it is. So you mentioned, hey, listen, a Virat Kohli playing for 5 days, or Usain Bolt running for 10 seconds, and so on. But even that is micro. If you pull away from that, you'd see Virat has to play maybe 8 test matches in a year. Usain Bolt has to run, 8 Diamond League events in a year. So, you're going. So what looks like 10 seconds is now 8 events. And those 8 events, when you pull back further, is spaced out every 4 weeks, for example. Or those test matches are spaced out over a period of 6 months. So you can pull that up. So what's happening at a very, very macro level, you're able to see, okay, this moment in time, I need to be at my peak level. Okay, so we're able to bring all our faculties together, and we're able to keep all our distractions aside, so we show up 100%. In the world of business, you don't pull the lens that far back. So what's happening is you're expected to be peak performance every single day from 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. Right? But when I asked my CEOs, I said, guys, it's impossible to do this. So tell me which day is the most important day. And in your day, which hour is the most important hour and which week of your quarter is the most important. I said, if you don't break it down, then how are you supposed to mentally prepare? You can't be sharp 24/7, 365. So what I'm describing is a word called periodization. And if a corporate mind can wrap your entire year around periods and cycles of peak performance, you will outperform every other person in your organization or every other organization in your industry, hands down. Right? It's because you put this burden of expectation on everyone in the organization to be razor sharp 365. It's not possible. It's not possible. Maybe we'll get closer to it now with the advent of AI, but for people that are requiring human intelligence and human manpower hours, it will not be possible to be at peak levels of flow 365 days a year, 8 to 10 hours a day. Not possible. Impossible.
Very interesting. And there's so much of learnings which somebody can take from sports, right? Even sports people take breaks. It's not like they're playing and if we see that, right? If they've been burnt out, like there's so much of conversation right now in cricket that Indian cricketers are spending so much energy it kind of drains them out before they get into the main league, international matches, right? And there's so much of conversation about, is IPL good or bad for India, as an example, and we are seeing those effects. And what it is implying is that human beings need break. You can't be stressing your body and mind over a period of time, and that same thing needs to be done in corporate, right? People don't take leaves and they kind of shoulder up and saying, I've not taken a single leave in a year, right? And see how good I am, right? They're burning themselves down. Do you agree?
Yeah, I do agree, because we reward the wrong things. Also, the other interesting thing is that, in the world of sport, we think an athlete knows, irrespective of which sport, he knows the body and the mind are the two important faculties that I need to look after. So as a result of that, he's got a person who's coaching his strength. He's got a person who's coaching his flexibility. He's got a person who's coaching his technique and his physicality. He's got a person who's coaching his mind. He's got a person taking care of his nutrition. He's got someone analyzing his sleep and all of his data. And he's taking all of these variables and mapping it together to know how and when to raise that performance. Okay. Yeah. Now, I am yet to meet too many corporate people below C-suite level who invest any money at all in their body and mind. Yes, they may do a CrossFit class 3 times a week or 4 times a week. They may join a running club, but they've not even scratched the surface of understanding how to optimize their body. And that body is needed for them to show up on a day-to-day basis. And if you look at the HR departments of major organizations, and India is a beautiful case study where I speak to these HR departments and they allocate a budget of 800 to 1,000 rupees per person per year to do activities for them, HR-based activities. 1,000 rupees. That is it, 1,000 rupees. You can't even get a decent cup of coffee at Starbucks for that, And yet, so you can now understand how high on a corporate's priority is your body and mind, right? So they're going to work you into the ground, right? But making sure that you are outperforming your own body and your own mind and your metabolic age is reducing is not their key priority. But if it's not even your key priority, you've got zero chance of success. That's the thing. That's the biggest thing. And I coach a lot of unicorn founders. And what's really scary is that, I have a CEO, and this is where people don't understand, is that I have a CEO who will invest sometimes the annual budget of an entire department just on me in his 1 month of coaching and just getting supplements and just getting technology. That's how much he values his own body and mind, But people down the line don't think about it at all. Zero. And as a result, that's why C-suite's always going higher and everyone else is feeling a little bit stuck here. But also, we don't incentivize the right things, because in a corporate world, you are incentivized to spend more time in there. So you get an ESOP pool, you get equity, that equity vests over 2 or 3 years. So, and there's no way for you to circumnavigate that. You can't say, hey, listen, yeah, you may get a little bonus, but if you outperform by 10x, you can't have your equity paid out that month. You still got to wait 3 years, 5 years. So as a result, people have now said, okay, I'm here for the long run, and there is no vested interest in me outgrowing this curve.
Yeah.
Because it's going to cost me X, but the reward is zero.
Yeah, and today I see that many people are struggling that even if they want to spend time on their body or in mind, corporates are not allowing them to give that space to do that comfortably, right? Because their work is demanding so much. They, bad eating habits, which also become a bigger problem, which basically is a fuel to your body. People don't appreciate or respect that. So it's a different problems. But just switching gears a little bit, Shayamal, you are yourself doing a lot, right? An author, right? You are having these sessions like the Inside the Locker Room. You are also coaching, and there's so much going around you. If whatever we spoke, how do you look at it yourself, right? How do you stay balanced in many things which is going around you?
Yeah. So, what's the interesting thing about my life is, yes, it looks like a hell of a lot. And it is a hell of a lot if you look at everything in individual. But the subject is the same. It's only the expression of it that's different. So a conversation like this on a podcast is, we're still talking psychology. We're still talking my field. I'm just expressing it through a podcast. When I'm working with the football team, I'm still deep in psychology, and I'm just now doing a practical on-ground application of it. When I'm setting up a locker room and building a tribe, I'm still talking psychology and I'm still talking that. I'm just now talking to a different audience and giving them a different piece of information. So the first key thing is what's called lateral thinking and lateral expression. So if you want to truly maximize your potential and maximize your earning, it's not about creating differentiated fields. That's where people get burnt out. It's like, hey, you know what? I want to play this sport, and then I want to be this musician, but I'm actually an aeronautical engineer by the daytime. And my creative thing outside of this is I want to build a pottery community or whatever. Everything is so polar opposite to each other that you need to have individual buckets of energy for that. What's happening with me and many people like myself who are doing a lot and able to manage it and are successful is because the vertical is the same. The expression of it is laterally diversified.
No, this has been an amazing conversation, Shayamal, and but when I look at you and when I look at what all you are doing, right, it's also sometimes begs the question, right, how far should we go and spread, right? Like that expression of the same piece, right? But how far do you stretch so that you don't break that rubber band also, right? Because you may be doing that same thing, right? So what's your recommendation to somebody on that front?
Well, that's very, very interesting. So I break it up into different methods, right? The first method for me is my sports teams and the work I do with them is not it's not my biggest or my most important earning revenue. No, it's not. It's 30% of my time goes in with professional athletes, but that's where all my research comes in. That's where I'm testing ideas, where I'm growing and I'm expanding myself. Most of the time, I don't even take any fees for working with these athletes. I'm giving. I'm even paying my own flights, my own accommodation, just to be in that ecosystem so I can get data and see how this data is expressed. My big ticket revenues come in from my speaking and working with CEOs. And I keep that very, very small. I wouldn't be working with more than a dozen of these people at any one time. And my speaking just varies when it is. But I also recognize that, hey, listen, I'm giving to my athletes, which are a very niche community, for free. And I've got that. But, there's a large chunk of people that could benefit from these small nuggets that wouldn't normally have access to me. So through the tribe and through the community, it's just a very, very low touch point, very nominal fee. It's not designed to sort of make money in any shape and form. It's designed to have just skin in the game. That's it. The reason why is if I put a webinar out for free, the Zoom room will be full before I even jump on. There'll be 1,000 people on that Zoom room, webinar close. Now, when I ask those people, hey, do something, right? Very few of them would do that. So what I do through my communities is keep a nominal price point. Sometimes €3, €4 a month, 50 euros a year. It's all it is like, I feel like, when a person just transacts a little bit, there's some skin in the game to listen a little bit more. And then I know that they really, really invested, And the other thing that I've had to differentiate, and this is a very important point for everyone out there, is you have to differentiate between who's serious and who's not serious. And that transaction, for me, lets me know one thing, right? Even if it's a person just paying €1 or $1 or 20 rupees, it doesn't matter. It means that there was, based on the work that I do, that there's a pain so significant in their life at that moment they're willing to give you $1 or €1 to find an answer. Right? Nice. That's how serious the pain is. Now, that was an important moment for me because throughout my journey that they are with me, almost every 15 days, I will remind them, go back to that moment when you gave me your first $1, right? What was troubling you there? That pain was so important to you fixing that you transacted. And you listened to me and you did something. Maybe over 15 days, you showed up 5 days only. But those 5 days of showing up for yourself has reduced the impact of that pain, right? And now you're losing momentum. But just imagine the universe has shown you the power of consistency. Now, 5 days means that pain's going to come back in the next 15 to 20 days time. It could be emotional, it could be relationship-based, it could be physical, it could be financial. It's going to come back. Why? Because you've lost the momentum. So when they've given me that €1 or that $1, I keep going back to that moment and I tell them, hey, listen, man, something was so painful at that moment. You gave someone you didn't even know $1 to help you fix it. Never forget that moment. Never forget it. Let that be the pain that wakes you up every day and pushes you forward. Yeah. So that transaction moment is critical for me. Critical to help them remember where they were in life at one stage and where they never want to get back to.
Okay. Shayamal, I know you're super busy and you've taken time out to do this podcast with me. And I'm telling you, I've learned a lot today personally. And though I'm not an athlete, but I've been going to take a lot of these learnings back into my corporate world and with my team for sure, as much as possible. But I'm sure people would want to reach out to you. So I'll definitely leave your contacts. When I say contacts, your Instagram and your LinkedIn so that people can look it up.
Yeah.
No, thanks a lot for taking time out. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the show. So thank you.
Thank you very, very much for inviting me. It was a beautiful conversation. To everyone who listened and gave me the hour, thank you very much. And I hope and please do stay in touch. You can find me obviously on Instagram at Shayamal. Do join the community. We welcome everyone and you will definitely get a lot of benefit from it. But I wish you everything of the best with your podcast. May it keep growing from strength to strength. May season 3 become season 30 before you know it. And I wish you everything of the best. Thank you so much.